Well, hi everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm Kenichi Suzuki, and it's great to be here in Brisbane. So I'm visiting from Tokyo, but I definitely love Australia, and Brisbane is my favorite city. I have a personal connection here too. My son actually lives here and studies at QUT. So professionally, I spend most of my time in the world of SEO. And I'm a diamond level Google product expert, which is the highest tier in their support community. And I'm passionate about helping people understand how Google search works. And I'm also a long-time SEO blogger. For nearly 20 years. I've written an article every single day for my blog. And it's one of the most popular in the Japanese SEO community. And of course, it's built on WordPress, just like the site many of you work on. So today, I'm going to talk about the core visual elements you see in Google search results and how you can make them look great. This session is designed for SEO beginners and intermediate users. So if that's you, you are in the right place. And for the SEO experts in the audience, I bet you still find a new perspective or a useful tip. So either way, I hope you enjoy my session. Before we dive in, just a few quick notes to keep in mind. First, although this presentation is for WordPress users, these tips will work for any website. Second, you might have a head start, as many WordPress themes or plugins already have some of these features built right in, which is a great bonus. And finally, remember that depending on your specific theme or plugins, you might run into some limitations. But don't worry, if you can't apply every single tip, just focus on what you can do, okay? So all right, let's start with a quick poll. Imagine you are a tourist visiting Brisbane for the first time, and you are looking for something exciting to do. You pull out your phone and Google things to do in Brisbane in June. You get these 3 results at the top. Take a moment to look at them. Which one do you click first? Let's do a quick show of hands. So which result do you click the first? Can you see the result? Okay, thanks. So who would click the result on the left? Raise your hand. Few people. Okay, thanks. And how about the one in the middle? 6 or 5. Thanks. And the one on the right. Oh, nearly 20. Thanks. So it looks like most of you chose the one on the right from TripAdvisor. This is exactly what I expected. And it's a perfect example of what we are talking about today. The result on the left is okay, but maybe a little boring. The middle one is better because it mentions one exact date, June, right? And which is good, but the TripAdvisor result on the right is the most appealing, at least to me. Why? It has an eye-catching title that makes a strong promise, and it's a from brand that people all over the world trust for travel. Its short description also contains Brisbane landmarks such as the Koala Sanctuary and South Bank. That combination makes you want to click it. So what's the key takeaway from that poll? It's this. Of course, we all know that ranking high in Google is crucial for getting clicks. But that's not the whole story. As we just saw, the visual appeal of your search result heavily influences which one a user decides to click. A compelling, great-looking result can often win the click. even against a high-ranked competitor. Make sense? Here's a quick real-world example of this in action. For this client, we focused on improving their page title to be more compelling in the search results. The impact was huge, a 74.1% increase in clicks in a 3-month period. This chart shows the traffic before the changes with dotted line and the traffic after with a solid line. It's a clear example of how improving the visual appeal of your title can drive significantly more traffic to your site. And it's not just my own clients seeing these results. I came across another great case study on LinkedIn recently. After this site owner improved her page title, she was saw a 35% jump in clicks. On top of that, her site also began ranking more keywords. It shows again how a single change can lead to multiple benefits. So the lesson from these case studies is simple but powerful. Improving visual elements in search results has the potential to drive more traffic. Alright, so we know that visual appeal matters. Now let's break down the anatomy of a standard search result. While Google uses many different formats, we are going to focus on the key elements you see almost every time. It's helpful to know their names, as we'll be talking about how to optimize each one. Let's do a quick tour from these elements, starting from the top left and moving clockwise. First, you have the favicon, that tiny logo that helps users recognize your brand at a glance. Next to it is the site name, which is the name of your website. Then you have the URL, which indicates the page's location on the site. After that, we have the snippet. This is the short text description under the title, and its job is to give a preview that convinces the user your page has the answer they are looking for. And finally, the most critical element for getting the click, the title link. This is the main clickable headline in blue that grabs all the attention. So those are our 5 core elements: favicon, site name, URL, snippet, and the title link. Please be sure to remember these terms as we are about to dive into each one. Okay? So let's start with arguably the most important element we discussed, the title link. Just as a quick reminder, the title link is the main clickable headline for your page that appears in search results. Now, here's a really important point to understand. The title you set in WordPress is not always the one Google shows in the search results. To create the most helpful title link for a user, Google's system automatically considers several factors. Let's look at what they are. So the first and most important source Google looks at is your page's HTML title element. This is the official title you set for your page in the code. In this example from Reddit, you can see the title link in the search result is the exact match for what's in their title tag. When this happens, it's working exactly as intended. There's no problem here. However, it's crucial to understand that Google rewriting your title isn't a rare exception. It's not the norm. In fact, one study found that Google modifies the title element in about 76% of search results. This means that most of the time, Google's system believes it can create a better, more helpful title than the one we provided. Let's look at how that happens. Why does Google change titles? One of the most common reasons is to remove redundant information. Let's look at the perfect example right from this campus, TAFE Queensland. The page's actual HTML title tag includes the brand name, TAFE Queensland, at the very end. But in the search result, Google cuts it off. Why would it do that? Because Google already shows TAFE Queensland as the official site name above the title, right? It removes the repetition to make the title cleaner and more direct for the user. Now let's look at another common case when the original HTML title is completely ignored. This happens a lot when the title is too long or doesn't describe the content well. And this rule applies even to Google's own pages. This example comes from their official documentation about title length. If you look at the bottom screenshot, you can see the actual title tag in the code is very long. I don't think you can recognize it, right? It's very long and not very user-friendly. Now look at the title link Google created for the search result on the top upper screenshot. It's completely different. It's short, clear, and much more helpful. So if Google ignored the title tag, where did it get that new, better title from? It pulled the text directly from the page's main headline, the H1 element in the code. And this brings us to a critical point for modern SEO. Google now very frequently uses heading elements, like your H1, to create the title link. Often, Google's system describes that your on-page headline is a more accurate and helpful description of your content than the formal title tag is. Now, some of you with sharp eyes might have noticed something else or something strange about that last title link. It has a text bookmark _ border added to the very end. What is that? It's actually a piece of text associated with the bookmark icon on the page. It's not meant to be read by visitors. This is a great example of how Google's automated system, while powerful, isn't perfect. Sometimes it makes an odd choice to put in text that doesn't make sense. The lesson here is that Google can and does pull from any text on your page to create title. Make sense? Okay, so we've seen that Google can pull from many sources on your page to create a title link, from your headlines to other on-page content. But let's simplify what you need to focus on. It really comes down to two key elements: your HTML title element and your main H1 elements. These are by far the most common and influential sources Google uses. If you get these two right, you've done most of the work to create a great title link. Typically, WordPress sets your post title to be the H1 heading. For any subheadings within your article, you can then use the heading block to add your H2s, H3s, and so on. And it's important to remember, Google can use text from any of these headings to create a title link if it thinks it's a better match for a user's search. Now looking at your HTML title element, the default setting is often your post title plus your site name. But as we've discussed, Google frequently cuts the title name, cuts the site name off anyway to avoid redundancy. Therefore, my recommendation is to bring these two things in line. If your theme or SEO plugin allows it, change that default setting to remove the site name from your title element. When you do this, your title simply becomes your post title, making it identical to your H1. This is a smart and perfectly fine configuration that prevents Google from rewriting your title, as we are now sending one clear and consistent signal. This is not mandatory, just my recommendation. Okay? So what makes a great title? Let's walk through the key guidelines on this slide. First, let's talk about the title length. As a general rule, aim for about 60 characters for desktop and up to 70 for mobile, since mobile titles can wrap to a second line. So which should you aim for? The best way to decide is to look at your own traffic data. If most of your search visitors are on mobile, you can use the extra space. If they are mostly on desktop, it's safer to stick to closer to 60. But no matter what, the most important strategy is to put your critical information and keywords at the very beginning. If you do that, your main message will always get through. Second, use words your audience uses. Weave them into a natural headline. But don't overdo it and stuff it with keywords. And to finish, a few rapid fire points. Be concise and descriptive. Be direct and clearly state what the page is about. Reflect the content accurately. Your title must match the content on the page to build trust. Avoid clickbait. Make it compelling. Go beyond just describing the content. Make your title interesting enough to win the click. Okay, let's apply the guidelines we just covered to our original search for things to do in Brisbane in June. I've created a few example titles here. Please read them. You might notice they look straightforward and simple, and that's intentional. Good titles aren't about being overly clever. They're about being clear and effective by following the best practices we've discussed. Okay? Now let's take these clear titles and make them even more eye-catching to really stand out. This is where we add some simple copyright techniques. In these examples, you'll notice two classic tricks. First, I've used compelling words like hidden gems, secrets, or unique. Words like these spark more interest than a simple description. Second, I've used numbers. A title like 10 best things to do is almost always powerful than just best things to do. Our brains are drawn to specific numbered lists. These small tweaks can dramatically improve how many clicks you get. But the final word of advice: don't feel like you have to force these tricks into every title. Use your best judgment and apply them only when they feel appropriate for the tone of your content. Make sense? Okay, thanks. I'll share a quick tip for creating these titles. I used AI to help draft those examples. Generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Gemini are excellent for quickly brainstorming dozens of ideas. You can also find these AI features built directly into some WordPress platforms and plugins. making them easy to use. Let's quickly cover a few common mistakes to avoid with your titles. First, making them too long. Sticking to those 60 or 70 character guidelines reduces the chances of Google rewriting them. Second, creating titles that are pure clickbait or stuffed with keywords. This kind of aggressive SEO can make you look untrustworthy and may even lead to penalties in the end. I wrote some keyword stuffed titles. As you can see, they look incredibly spammy. Never write titles like this, okay? Never do that. Alright, so we have a solid strategy for our title links. Now let's move on to the next key element in the search result. That is the snippet. Just to recap, snippet is the short description below your title. Its job is to provide a preview of your content and convince the user that your page is the right one to click. So let's talk about how to control what appears in your snippet. The surprising truth is you can't control it. At least not directly. Unlike titles, you have very little direct control over the snippet that Google displays. So why does Google do this? Because it wants to show the most relevant possible text to the user. Google's system automatically scans your page and generates a snippet from the content that best matches that user's specific search query. This means the snippet for your page can change depending on what the user searches for. Here's a perfect example of this in action. These three results are all for the exact same page, our WordCamp Brisbane homepage. However, notice that each snippet is completely different. Sorry for the characters too small, but they are different. This is Google automatically customizing the snippet to be the most relevant for three different search queries. So if we can't control the snippet, what can we do? We can at least provide a hint to Google. We do this using the meta description tag. This is a tag in your page's code where you can write a default description for the page. To be clear, Google will still generate its own snippet most of the time. However, it may choose to use the meta description if its system determines that your description is the most relevant and helpful summary for a user's query. It's important to know that WordPress doesn't have a default setting for meta descriptions. This feature is almost always added by your theme or an SEO plugin. Many of these tools will automatically use the content you put in the excerpt field as the meta description for your post. I would recommend checking how your specific theme or plugins handle this, so you know where to write your descriptions. Let's cover a few key tips for writing meta descriptions. Just like a title, it must accurately summarize the page's content. Second, regarding length, we have more flexibility here. A longer description doesn't cause problems because Google can select the most relevant part that best answers user's query and show just that portion as the snippet. So feel free to write a detailed summary. Finally, and this is critical, meta descriptions do not directly affect search rankings. For this reason, there is no benefit to stuffing them with keywords. Focus on writing a clear and compelling summary for a human reader. Make sense? Okay, let's move on to our next core element, the favicon. A favicon is the small icon that sits next to your site's name in the search results. Now, this might seem like a tiny detail, but it can have surprisingly big impact on clicks, similar to your title link. Okay, let's do a quick visual test. Again, take a close look at the 4 search results on the slide. Specifically, they are favicons. Which of these favicons do you think are effective and which ones are not? More importantly, why? What makes one of these stand out while another one gets lost or looks unprofessional? Take a moment to think about it. Can you see these icons? Okay. Take a close look at them and compare them. Okay, so let's break down these examples. First, pay attention to the top left from WordCamp Central. This one is excellent. It's clear, simple, and uses the WordPress logo. So you instantly recognize that the site is official and trustworthy, right? Now for the one on the top right. This site doesn't have a favicon set at all. When that happens, Google shows this generic globe icon. This is a huge missed opportunity to branding and recognition. Now let's look at the bottom left from WordCamp Europe, which took place just last week. In my opinion, this favicon isn't very effective. It's difficult to see what the image is, so it doesn't help the user recognize the brand. Finally, the favicon on the bottom right for QUT, Queensland University of Technology. This is another great example. As I have a quick personal story here, as I mentioned, my son studies at QUT. When he was looking for information about the enrollment process, he told me he could easily spot the official university's page in the search results just by looking for their favicon. That's the power of this small detail. It builds trust and helps your audience find you. So to quickly summarize the key takeaway from those examples, your favicon represents your brand and should stand out in search results, helping your audience find you in a crowded list. So how do you add your favicon to your site? While the technical method involves HTML code, the great news is that WordPress makes this incredibly simple. You don't need to touch any code. From your dashboard, just go to General Settings and look for the Site Icon section. Just upload your image there. WordPress handles all of the technical work for you. Now let's talk about the technical guidelines from Google for creating an effective icon. There are just 2 key things to keep in mind. First, your image must be perfect square with 1:1 aspect ratio. Second is the size. While the absolute minimum is tiny at 8 by 8 pixels, Google's recommendation is to use an image that is larger than 48 by 48 pixels. This helps ensure your favicon is high quality and looks sharp on all devices. Just so you know, you might see a different recommendation inside WordPress, which suggests a 512 by 512 pixel site icon. That's a great practice for overall site health, but for Google search specifically, the main guideline to remember is 48 by 48 or larger. Okay? Here's another important tip for favicon design. Remember to test it on both a light and dark background. Google Search offers both themes, so your favicon must be clearly visible on each one to be effective for all users. Here's a critical design tip. Be very careful about using long words in your favicon, as they often become unreadable when shrunk down. The favicon on this slide for fever on the top and the zone bowling in the middle are good examples of this problem. Their text is cramped, blurry, and hard to recognize at a glance. Can you recognize them? Okay. So now, however, this doesn't mean you can never use text. Remember the excellent QUT favicon we saw earlier? It used the three letters Q, U, T, and it's perfect, clear, and effective. Now I realize for those of you sitting in the back, even this one might be hard to see clearly on the screen. I'd encourage you to search for QUT on your phone later, and you'll see what I mean about this clarity. So the guideline is this. If you use text, keep it extremely short. A single bold initial is great. A short, clear acronym of 3 or 4 letters, like QUTs, can also work very well. The goal is always instant readability. Make sense? Here's a key technical rule for favicons that's important to understand. Google Search supports only one favicon per host name, which is your domain or subdomain. A subdirectory, on the other hand, will always use the same favicon as its main domain. For example, a subdomain like brisbane.example.com can have its own unique favicon. However, subdirectory like www.example.com/bne/ cannot have its own, and will simply inherit the favicon from the main site. The bottom line is this. To have your own unique favicon appear in Google search, your website must be on its own custom domain. Okay? All right, we've covered favicons. Now let's shift our focus to the element that appears right next to it in the search results, the site name. The site name is your brand name displayed at the top of your result. While it seems straightforward, there are a few key practices to ensure Google shows the name you actually want. Let's dive into them. Here's a common problem to watch out for with your site name. Sometimes, instead of showing your actual brand name, Google will just display your domain name, as shown on the slide. This is a situation we want to avoid, as showing your proper name looks much more professional, and it's better for brand recognition. So how do we fix this and make sure Google shows your proper brand name? We need to send Google clear signals. Its system looks for 4 main signals on your site to identify your name, which you can see listed on this slide. However, I want you to focus on the last one, as it is by far the most important and effective signal you can provide. This is website structured data. So on the last slide, I said that website structured data is the most important signal. You're probably asking, what exactly is that? Don't worry, it's less complicated than it sounds. Simply put, it's a piece of code written specifically for search engines, not for people. Think of it as a hidden label on your website that explicitly tells Google, hey, this is my official site name. The code on this slide is a perfect example of that. You don't need to understand the code itself. The only thing you need to remember is that providing this code is the most direct and reliable way to get Google to display your correct brand name. So your obvious next question is, how do I add this to my WordPress site? The good news is you don't need to be a developer. While you can code it into your theme files, the much easier and safer way for almost everyone is to use a plugin. Many popular SEO plugins that you might already have installed will handle this for you automatically. If not, there are many dedicated structured data plugins in the official directory to choose from. A plugin does all the hard work of generating the correct code. Because I handle this directly in my themes code for my own blog, I can't recommend one specific plugin over another. But for most users, using a well-regarded plugin is definitely the best approach. Here's a really useful tip for your site name structured data using the alternate name property. Let's go back to our QUT example. The university's full official name is Queensland University of Technology, but almost everyone just knows it as QUT. The alternate name property is designed for exactly this. It allows you to officially tell Google, my full name is this, but I also go by this shorter name. Adding the alternate property to the structured data gives Google the flexibility to show you a more common and recognizable name in the search results when it thinks it's more appropriate for the user. After you've added structured data to your site, there is one final essential tip. You need to test it. Fortunately, there's a free official tool that makes this easy called the Schema Markup Validator. This tool checks your code for any errors and confirms that search engines can read it correctly. It's a quick way to make sure your work is implemented perfectly. Now I want to show you a very strange example I found when I was preparing my session. This search result is for the WordCamp Brisbane homepage, but something is obviously wrong with it. Take a look. Can you spot the mistake? I'll give you a hint. Focus on the site name and the favicon. They are wrong. So what happened there? First, here is what the search result for WordCamp Brisbane should have looked like. This is a mock result I created. This is not a real result. This is the real result, and I made this. Site name and favicon is wrong. After some investigation, I discovered the cause. In the past, the Brisbane site was temporarily redirected to the main WordCamp Central site. Because of this, Google's system essentially stuck the favicon and site name from WordCamp Central onto the Brisbane result. I was actually able to confirm this theory with a representative from the Google search team. And for a fascinating update, just after I finished preparing this presentation slide, it's just a few days ago, I checked again, and the good news is that the favicon has finally been updated to the correct one. However, as you can see, the site name is still wrong, right? This reveals a very important lesson for all of us. Changes your site name, site's favicon and name are not instant. It can take a long time, sometimes even a few months, for Google to recrawl your site and update the search result. So patience is absolutely key. As a final note on this, I also discovered that the WordCamp Brisbane site is missing the website structured data we talked about. Adding that markup to the homepage would be the best next step to help Google finally display the correct name. Of course, with this year's event already underway, it may be too late for that change to be reflected for the current site. However, I hope this serves as a helpful tip for the organizers of the next WordCamp in Australia. Implementing this structured data from the start would be a great way to ensure the new site looks perfect in search results from day one. Anyway, if you'd like to learn more detail about any of the visual elements we've covered, I've listed the official Google documentation for each topic on this slide. You don't have to take a photo of this slide. I'll give you a copy of my presentation slides later, okay? Before we wrap up, I want to quickly make you aware of a few other powerful visual elements you will see in search results. They are more advanced and beyond the scope of today's session. However, it's good to know they exist, and I encourage you to explore the official documentation to learn more about them when you feel ready. The byline date is the published date that Google shows for a page. It's an important visual cue, as users often prefer to click on more recent content. These large thumbnails you see in search results are called text result images. They are incredibly effective at grabbing attention and winning clicks simply because they make a standard result so much more visual. Rich results are search results visually enhanced with extra information and interactivity, like the recipe ratings and the article carousel you see here. There are many types of rich results available for different kinds of content, and they are all enabled by adding the specific structured data to your page, just like the site name. All right, we've covered a lot of ground. Before we finish, let's quickly recap the most important takeaways from this session. First, the main idea. The visual appearance of your search result is a huge factor in winning the click. It's not just about your ranking. Now for the specific elements. For title links, which have the biggest impact, focus on keeping your title element and your H1 headline consistent, clear, and compelling. For snippets, remember that Google has most of the control. Your job is to write a good meta description that Google has most of the write a good meta description, which act as a helpful suggestion or a fallback. Your favicon is your tiny brand signature. Make it simple and instantly recognizable to build trust and stand out from the crowd. And finally, for your site name, the most reliable way to set it is with structured data, which a good plugin can easily handle for you. So if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, you can download it using the QR code or the link on the screen. Thank you so much for your time and for being such a great audience. It has been an absolute pleasure sharing this with you. I'll be around for the rest of the event, so please feel free to come say hello and ask any questions. Enjoy the rest of WordCamp. Thank you.